Why did you turn me out of my cottage, Your Grace? The widow's question struck the long gallery before the steward could announce her name, and every conversation died beneath the painted faces of dead Ainsworth dukes. Mrs. Elspeth Ward stood alone upon the black and white marble floor, small beneath the gilded frames, her morning gown brushed pale at the cuffs and her bonnet darkened by travel. In one gloved hand she held a folded paper. In the other she gripped a worn reticule with such force that the leather creased beneath her fingers. Louisa Ainsworth, Duchess of Redmarsh, sat at the presentation table with her oak-painted fan closed across her lap. One pairward guard carried an old crack bound by silk thread chosen years ago by her mother. Louisa had learned during the first year of her marriage that society forgave a woman for hiding behind a fan more readily than it forgave her for showing pain. She did not raise it. "Which cottage?" she asked. Mrs. Ward stepped forward before the steward could intervene. "Westmere, Your Grace. My husband served under Lord Densham in Spain. I was told the trustees had approved my pension claim. Then this arrived." She placed the paper on the polished table. Red wax marked one corner. The impression bore the ducal coronet and the device used by the Duchess's household office. Beneath it stood a sentence written in a clerk's careful hand. "Her Grace has judged the claim without sufficient merit." A second line warned that further appeal would suggest improper dependence upon ducal indulgence. Louisa read the words without touching the document. At the head of the table, Benedict Ainsworth, 8th Duke of Redmarsh, looked first at the wax and then at his wife. His expression barely changed, but Louisa knew the particular stillness that meant he believed something unpleasant had just been confirmed. For 12 months, Benedict had treated her with faultless courtesy and absolute emotional exclusion. He rose when rank required it. He offered his arm when witnesses expected it. He never raised his voice. He simply regarded her as a woman whose motives had already been weighed and found unworthy. "I have never seen your petition," Louisa said. Mrs. Ward's chin trembled. "Lady Constance warned me not to hope, Your Grace. She said you had little patience for old soldiers' families who mistook sentiment for entitlement." Lady Constance Ainsworth sat 2 places from Benedict, silver-haired, elegant, and composed enough to make cruelty appear like concern. "I tried to spare Mrs. Ward embarrassment," she said. "A duchess receives more requests than any woman could remember." "I remember every petition placed before me," Louisa replied. Mrs. Ward's was not among them. Malcolm Greaves, the Redmarsh solicitor and administrator of the pension trust, folded his hands over his waistcoat. "The order passed through the estate office in the customary manner, Your Grace." "Through whose hands?" Louisa asked. "Several clerks may prepare such documents." "Who decided the claim?" "The decision was entered under your authority." "That was not my question." Greaves's courteous expression held, though a faint tension appeared at the corner of his mouth. Benedict's fingers settled against the table. "Mrs. Ward will be heard," he said when the steward took one cautious step forward. The protection was for the widow, not for Louisa. Even so, Lady Constance's gaze sharpened. Louisa turned back to Mrs. Ward. "Who received your petition?" "The rector sent it to the estate office." "Did anyone speak with you before this refusal arrived?" "Lady Constance did." "Did she say she had spoken with me?" Mrs. Ward hesitated. "Not plainly. She spoke as though she knew what you would decide." The silence that followed was more dangerous than open accusation. Louisa looked toward Mr. Toland, an older solicitor attending as one of the independent subscribers. He held no office at Redmarsh and owed no favor to its household. "Mr. Toland, will you take charge of the order?" Greaves moved slightly. "That seems unnecessary." "It seems exact," Louisa said. "The document should be enclosed, signed across the fold, and kept outside the estate office until its preparation is traced." Benedict studied her. "You do not wish to examine it yourself?" "Not before its keeping is secured." "Mr." Toland rose and drew a clean envelope from his document case. He invited Mrs. Ward to watch as he placed the original order inside. Louisa did not touch it. The flap was folded and sealed. Mrs. Ward signed across one edge. Louisa signed across another. Benedict added his name beneath theirs. Mr. Toland recorded the time, placed the envelope inside his private document case, turned the key, and kept it upon his person. "It will not leave my keeping without a witness transfer," he said. Louisa inclined her head. "Thank you." Mrs. Ward looked between the Duke and Duchess. "Will I be removed before the week is out?" Greaves drew breath, but Benedict answered first. "No," the single word carried across the gallery. "No agent will enter Westmere Cottage to disturb your possession until the claim has been examined." Relief crossed the widow's face so quickly that Louisa felt it like pain. Benedict continued, "Mr. Hales will send written instruction before noon." "Thank you, Your Grace." Mrs. Ward curtsied, but her eyes returned to Louisa. "I didn't wish to shame you." "You wish to keep your home," Louisa said. "You were right to come." The presentation resumed, though nothing in the room returned to its previous order. Every petitioner who approached the table now glanced at Louisa's hands. Every trustee watched Benedict. Lady Constance spoke in murmurs to Greaves when she believed the rustle of papers would cover her voice. Louisa kept her fan closed. By the time the final name was called, the September light had faded against the tall windows, and the question had already begun moving through the abbey. What kind of duchess denied a soldier's widow a roof? The anniversary dinner that evening answered nothing. Candles shone against the long mahogany table. Silver reflected the flames in narrow, trembling lines. Louisa sat where rank required, several places from Benedict. The chair at her right remained empty because the expected guest had not arrived, and no one chose to move nearer. Conversation passed around her in polished currents. Harvest yields. Road repairs. The lateness of the London season. No one mentioned Mrs. Ward. The silence was not kindness. It was appetite disciplined by manners. Beneath the table, Louisa rested one thumb against the silk binding on the cracked fan. Benedict spoke to a trustee about drainage and did not once ask whether she had issued the refusal. Lady Constance waited until the final course had been cleared before lifting her glass. We should not allow the day to pass without honouring its private significance. 1 year ago, Redmarsh welcomed its Duchess. Several guests turned toward Louisa. "Let us drink to a year of proper duty." Glasses rose. Benedict's remained upon the table for one breath too long before he lifted it. Louisa raised hers because refusal would become another story told in rooms where she was not present. "To duty," she said. Her voice did not tremble. Lady Constance smiled. Louisa saw triumph in it and gave her nothing in return. After dinner, the guests moved toward the drawing room. Benedict remained near the darkened table. "Louisa." It was the first time he had spoken her name that day. She stopped but did not turn immediately. "Your Grace." He approached, severe in black evening clothes, his face unreadable in the diminished candlelight. "The seal on that order appears to be yours." There was no question in the words. "Not yet." Louisa opened the fan once, letting the painted oak branch spread between them, then closed it again. "Tomorrow," she said, meeting his gaze, "we will discover whether the impression was made by mine." At 9 o'clock the following morning, Louisa unlocked the sloping lid of her private writing desk while 4 people watched her hands. Benedict stood beside the cold hearth. Mr. Toland occupied the chair nearest the window with his locked document case resting across his knees. Mr. Hales, the household steward, waited near the door, grave and upright. No maid had been admitted beyond the threshold. Louisa preferred fewer witnesses, not because she feared scrutiny, but because every additional pair of eyes would become another version of the story before luncheon. She turned the small brass key and lifted the lid. Inside lay household memoranda, unanswered notes, 2 sticks of red sealing wax, and a fitted morocco case no larger than her palm. Benedict watched her remove it. "When did you last use the seal?" he asked. 6 days ago. I approved a shipment of blankets for the lower cottages. Who was present? Mrs. Bell and Mr. Hales. The steward inclined his head. That is correct, Your Grace. Louisa placed the case on the table. The matrix was cut in October last year, after our marriage. It has never left this desk unless I carried it myself. Benedict's gaze sharpened. Never? Never knowingly. The qualification cost her something. He heard it. His expression did not soften, but the certainty in it shifted. Louisa released the clasp. The brass matrix lay in dark velvet, its handle engraved with a simple oak leaf. Mr. Toland leaned forward without touching it. Mrs. Ward's order should be opened first under the signatures made yesterday. He placed his document case on the table, unlocked it, and removed the sealed envelope. The 3 signatures across the flap remained unbroken. Mrs. Ward's name crossed one edge. Louisa's crossed another. Benedict stood below them. Mr. Toland showed the envelope to every witness before breaking the wax. The original refusal order emerged exactly as Louisa remembered it, folded once, the red impression chipped at the outer edge but still legible. She did not reach for it. Mr. Hales warmed fresh wax over a taper and let it fall onto a clean sheet. Louisa took up her seal. Benedict's eyes followed the movement as though the small instrument had become more dangerous than any accusation spoken aloud. She pressed the matrix into the softened wax, held it steady, then lifted it cleanly. The new impression and the refusal order lay side by side. The first difference appeared beneath the coronet. On Louisa's fresh seal, a single rounded bead sat complete and smooth. On Mrs. Ward's order, the same bead appeared divided into 2 uneven halves. Mr. Toland bent nearer. There is another distinction. He pointed to the right rim of the fresh impression. A small maker's nick. It is absent from the refusal. Benedict came to the table. Could damaged wax account for that? For the chipped edge, perhaps, Mr. Toland said. Not for a missing nick where the surrounding rim remains clear. And the divided bead. Pressure might deform one impression. It would not normally create the same clean division by chance. Louisa returned the seal to its velvet fitting. Then the order was not sealed with my matrix. The door opened after a discreet knock. Malcolm Greaves entered with Lady Constance behind him. Louisa had summoned neither. Benedict's mouth hardened. I asked for the estate records, not an audience. Constance stopped just inside the room. We heard the examination had begun. Surely those responsible for Redmarsh should be present. Responsibility does not grant access to my private desk, Louisa said. Greaves approached the table and studied the impressions. His professional calm remained intact. Wax is imperfect, Your Grace. Heat, dust, pressure, even the angle of the hand may alter fine details. Can heat erase a maker's nick while leaving the rim around it unbroken? Louisa asked. It may blur it. Can pressure divide one bead into 2? Under certain conditions. Which conditions? Greaves paused. I would prefer the judgment of an engraver. So would I, Benedict said. An independent seal cutter will be brought from Canterbury. Something tightened at the corner of Greaves's mouth and disappeared. Benedict had seen it. Until then, no petition, order, docket, memorandum, or trust record is to leave the estate office. Constance folded her hands. Benedict, is such severity necessary? One uncertain impression needn't become a scandal. The scandal began when a widow was ordered from her home in my wife's name. The words carried no tenderness, yet they placed Louisa within his protection rather than outside his judgment. She felt the difference and distrusted herself for feeling it. Mr. Toland returned Mrs. Ward's original order to the signed envelope. Before closing it, he read the identifying line aloud and recorded that the paper had been examined but not transferred. He folded the flap, sealed it again, and invited Louisa, Benedict, and Mr. Hales to initial the new wax. Then he locked the envelope inside his private document case. It remains in my keeping, he said. It won't be removed without witnesses. Benedict turned to Mr. Hales. Bring the official petition docket. The estate office occupied a lower room overlooking the service court. Ledgers lined the walls from floor to cornice. A long central desk bore inkstands, sand shakers, and bundles of folded correspondence tied by colour. Louisa entered beside Mr. Toland. Benedict followed. Constance and Greaves came behind them only after Benedict permitted it. Mr. Hales laid the official petition docket on the desk and opened it to the weeks preceding Mrs. Ward's refusal. The leather cover was worn smooth. Numbered entries filled the ruled columns in brown ink. Applications for roof repairs, coal allowances, apprenticeships, rent relief, and pension cottages appeared with dates, decisions, and initials. Mrs. Ward's name did not. Louisa turned back 3 pages, then forward 4. There is no entry. Greaves stood at the opposite side of the desk. Not every informal request is entered before review. Mrs. Ward received a formal refusal under ducal authority, Louisa said. If her petition was too informal to record, how did it become formal enough to reject? Constance answered before Greaves could. Perhaps she appealed through another channel. Then that channel should have a name. A rector. A former officer. An agent. The rector sent it to this office. Mrs. Ward told us so. Louisa traced the sequence of docket numbers without touching the ink. Who controls this book? The chief clerk maintains it under my direction, Greaves said. Who handled outgoing orders last month? Benedict asked. Greaves named 3 clerks. The last was Owen Lister. Bring him here, Benedict said. Mr. Hales looked toward the junior clerk's room. Mr. Lister hasn't reported this morning, Your Grace. Has he sent word? None. Greaves's voice came too quickly. The boy has been unwell. Benedict turned to him. You knew he was absent. I was informed. By whom? One of the clerks. Name him. Greaves supplied a name after a pause. Benedict ordered the man brought, then looked across the room at every desk and cabinet. From this moment, no record is to be corrected, recopied, destroyed, or removed. Mr. Hales will control access. Mr. Toland will witness every search. Lady Constance and Mr. Greaves will not examine any document alone. Constance's expression cooled. You mean to place the Duchess over an inquiry into her own authority? Louisa met her gaze. My name was used. I will not be excluded from discovering how. Benedict looked at Louisa, then at the empty chair belonging to Owen Lister. Nor will you be. Outside, the Abbey clock struck noon. Somewhere beyond Redmarsh, a missing clerk had already learned that the seal on Mrs. Ward's order did not match the Duchess's hand. Whether he had fled from guilt or fear remained the question that now governed the house. Louisa did not hear the chapel door open behind the carved screen. The stone floor held the cold of the hour before dawn, and the first light had not yet reached the narrow windows above the altar. She knelt in a side pew with her dark shawl drawn close around her shoulders. Her oak-painted fan rested unopened beside her, the old crack in one pairward guard still bound by the silk thread her mother had chosen years before. For several breaths, she said nothing. Benedict stood in the western passage and watched the bowed line of her head. Sleep had failed him again. It often did when the date of Salamanca drew near in his mind, even when the calendar did not. The Abbey became too still at such hours, and every stillness seemed to return him to the last letter he had sent Arthur. He had entered the chapel because empty rooms demanded less of him than sympathetic faces. He had not expected to find his wife there. He had certainly not expected to hear his brother's name. Arthur, Louisa whispered. Benedict's hand tightened against the edge of the carved screen. He should have stepped away. The prayer was not meant for him. Yet he remained. Let Mrs. Ward keep her home until the truth is known, Louisa said. Let no one's pride cost her a roof. Let the missing petitions be found before another family is punished for a decision it never received fairly. Benedict felt the first movement of shame before she ever spoke of him. And give Benedict rest. His name in her voice sounded unfamiliar. For a year, she had called him Your Grace with flawless courtesy and no expectation of tenderness. Let him remember Arthur without believing that every memory must become a sentence. Let him sleep without hearing blame in every silence. Benedict stopped breathing for one long moment. No one at Redmarsh knew the exact shape of his sleeplessness. Lady Constance knew that Arthur's death still governed him, but even she had never heard the words that followed him through the night. Louisa's hands folded more tightly. Do not make him love me out of guilt. I would rather have honesty without tenderness than tenderness born from pity. Only give him courage to know the truth, even if the truth condemns us both. And give me courage not to turn loneliness into bitterness. Benedict shifted his weight. His sleeve brushed the carved oak. The screen gave a soft, unmistakable knock. Louisa lifted her head. For one heartbeat she remained still, then rose from the kneeler, gathered her fan, and turned toward the passage. Her face was pale in the dim light, but she did not look ashamed of the prayer itself. How long have you been there? She asked. Long enough. Benedict came around the screen. An apology should have been his first word. It did not come. You spoke of Arthur. I did. Who told you? No one. Then how do you know? Louisa held the closed fan against her palm. You avoid this chapel when officers from his regiment visit. You sleep badly after their names are mentioned. You look at veterans as though each one carries a debt you failed to pay. Benedict stared at her. You've been observing me. We've lived beneath the same roof for a year. That isn't the same as knowing me. No, she said. You made certain of that. The answer struck without cruelty because she delivered it without heat. Benedict looked toward Arthur's memorial tablet, where the faint light had begun to touch the carved name. You don't know what happened. I know he died in Spain. Everyone knows that. I know you believe his death still asks something of you. I don't know what. Yet you prayed as though you understood. I prayed for suffering I could see. I didn't claim to understand its cause. Benedict had spent a year believing Louisa incapable of such restraint. He had believed her calculating, ambitious, and eager to use his family's grief to strengthen her position. Every refusal issued beneath her authority had seemed to prove him right. Now she stood before him after asking heaven not for his love, but for truth that might destroy what little remained of their marriage. Why? He asked. Why pray for me at all? Louisa's thumb moved over the silk binding on the cracked fan. Because your hatred doesn't make your suffering false. The words entered the chapel more quietly than an accusation, yet he felt them more deeply than anger. You think I hate you. You despised me since our wedding morning. You could have asked me about Arthur. You could have asked me about the refusals. Silence held between them. Benedict thought of Mrs. Ward's order, the divided bead beneath the coronet, the missing maker's nick, the absent docket entry, and Owen Lister's empty chair. He thought of how quickly he had looked at Louisa and found guilt before inquiry. I judged you without asking you a single honest question, he said. Louisa did not rescue him from the admission. Yes. He discovered that he respected her for refusing comfort he had not earned. A prayer isn't proof, she said. No, compassion isn't proof. No, then don't mistake what you heard for evidence of innocence. Benedict stepped nearer but left a careful distance between them. It is evidence of something else. What? That I do not know my wife. The dawn had strengthened enough for him to see the weariness beneath her composure. She had passed the same night without sleep, yet she had not crossed his threshold or used his weakness to demand explanation. He had called that indifference. Now he wondered whether it had been mercy. The inquiry changes this morning, he said. How? Lady Constance and Greaves will have no further control over petitions or cottage allocations while the records are examined. Mr. Toland will supervise the review with you. A faint line appeared between Louisa's brows. With me? Your name was used. You will not be excluded from discovering how. And the petitioners? Neither Constance nor Greaves will question them alone. Louisa studied him. If you suspend them now, they'll know you suspect them. I don't yet know whom I suspect. They won't hear the distinction. Then they may become careless. Something changed in her expression. It was not trust. It was attention. Benedict turned toward the chapel door. Come to the estate office after breakfast. Louisa did not move. What you heard here was private. Benedict looked back at her. It will remain here. A small measure of tension left her shoulders. Thank you. He left before the gratitude could become another thing he had not earned. By 8 o'clock, Mr. Hales had assembled the senior clerks in the estate office. Lady Constance arrived in a grey morning gown, composed enough to suggest she had expected the summons. Greaves entered with a leather portfolio under one arm and impatience hidden behind professional courtesy. Louisa came with Mr. Toland. Her authentic seal remained locked in the private writing desk where she had returned it the previous morning, and the key rested in the pocket of her gown. Mrs. Ward's original refusal order remained sealed inside Mr. Toland's private document case. Benedict stood behind the central desk. Until further notice, he said, Lady Constance and Mr. Greaves are suspended from direct handling of pension petitions, cottage allocations, and trust correspondence. Constance's expression did not change. On what basis? A refusal bearing the Duchess's authority was never entered in the official docket and was not made with her matrix. Greaves stepped forward. Your Grace, that conclusion is premature. The inquiry will determine its extent. Benedict indicated Mr. Toland. All records will be examined under his supervision and the Duchess's. Neither of you will speak privately with a petitioner or clerk involved in the review. Constance looked at Louisa. You allow one emotional display from a widow to overturn the established order of this house. Louisa answered before Benedict could. No. One false impression has overturned confidence in it. Benedict ordered the completed petition packets from the previous 12 months produced. A young clerk unlocked the first cabinet. Another opened the drawer assigned to rejected claims. It was empty. Mr. Hales crossed to the iron-bound petition chest beneath the north window. He unlocked the outer lid, then required Greaves to produce the second key for the narrow compartment within. Greaves did so after a visible pause. The compartment opened. Bundles of approved claims remained tied in green tape. The place reserved for rejected petitions held only pale marks in the dust where packets had once rested. Mr. Toland placed the official docket beside the open chest. Louisa turned the numbered pages slowly. The omissions did not form one gap. They appeared between lawful entries across several months. A coal allowance. A widow's annuity. Repairs to a former sergeant's roof. Then a blank serial space. Later, another. Then another. Benedict came to stand beside her. How many? Louisa counted once, then again. Greaves watched her hands. Lady Constance watched Benedict's face. Louisa lifted her eyes from the book. 12. The number 12 did not frighten Louisa as much as the spaces themselves. Each blank line lay between lawful entries written in the same brown ink, as if someone had opened the official history of Redmarsh, removed a family, and then continued without pause. Mr. Toland drew the docket closer but did not touch the pages until Mr. Hales had recorded the time and the names of everyone present. Benedict remained beside Louisa. Lady Constance stood near the shelves, her expression composed. Greaves watched the open petition chest with the fixed attention of a man measuring how much others could already see. These gaps are separated by weeks, Louisa said. They weren't left by one careless afternoon. Mr. Toland nodded. Nor by a clerk waiting to complete a single batch. The numbering continues after each omission. Mr. Hales bent over the inner compartment of the chest. Approved petitions remained tied in green tape, but the section assigned to rejected claims held faint rectangular marks in the dust. Packets rested here, he said. More than one bundle. Greaves folded his arms. Dust proves only that papers were moved. Then tell us where they were moved, Benedict replied. I can't account for every packet handled by junior clerks. You controlled the inner key, with Mr. Hales controlling the outer one. Benedict looked toward the steward. When was this compartment last opened? At the end of August, Your Grace. Mr. Greaves requested the quarterly review. Owen Lister attended as chief clerk. Were the rejected packets present? I saw bundles, but I didn't inspect every label. Greaves gave a slight, almost relieved breath. Louisa turned another page. Between the 7th and 8th blank spaces lay a legitimate coal allowance bearing Owen Lister's initials. His hand appeared again beside a widow's annuity 2 pages later. He didn't simply abandon the docket, she said. He entered lawful claims between the missing ones. Which means he knew where each number belonged, Mr. Toland said. Or someone instructed him when to leave a space. Lady Constance moved nearer. You speak as though the boy has already confessed. No, Louisa said. We speak as though his initials exist. Constance's gaze sharpened. Benedict closed the chest but left both locks open. Mr. Hales, send riders to every pension cottage and former regimental household named in the trust lists. Ask whether they received a refusal during the past 12 months. No tenant is to lose shelter, allowance, employment, or favour for answering. Greaves stepped forward. Your Grace, that will spread rumour through every village before we understand what happened. What happened has already reached the villages, Benedict said. We are the last to understand it. He turned to the assembled clerks. No one is to speak privately with Lady Constance or Mr. Greaves about this inquiry. If either requests a document, Mr. Toland or Mr. Hales must be present. Constance's face cooled. You dish your old service because your wife objects to one administrative decision. Benedict looked at Louisa, then at the 12 blank spaces. When he answered, his voice was steady enough to carry through the office. I dishonored my wife by allowing a household in which her authority could be invoked without her access to the records that carried it. No one moved. The admission did not restore what had been taken from Louisa during the first year of their marriage. It did not make his earlier suspicion disappear. Yet he had placed his own failure into the public record of the room, before servants who would remember whether he had chosen pride or truth. Lady Constance's mouth tightened. Self-reproach is not governance. No, Benedict said. But refusing it is worse. By the following afternoon, 3 petitioners had arrived at Redmarsh. Mrs. Ward returned with her married daughter. Samuel Pike, a former corporal with a stiff left shoulder from an old campaign injury, came from North Fen carrying a folded refusal in a tin document box. Mrs. Bell arrived from Darnley with an order denying the coal allowance she had requested after her husband's death. They were received in a smaller room beside the estate office, with chairs placed in a half-circle rather than behind the long trustees' table. Louisa wanted no one forced to stand while defending the right to warmth or shelter. Mr. Toland set his locked case before him. Mrs. Ward's original remains in my keeping, he said for the record. He showed the signed envelope with its seals intact, opened it before the witnesses, and removed the order only long enough for comparison. Mrs. Ward did not touch it. Mr. Pike and Mrs. Bell placed their own originals on separate sheets of clean paper. Mr. Toland marked each sheet with the owner's name so the documents could not be confused. Louisa examined the wax impressions without lifting any order from its place. All 3 bore the divided bead beneath the coronet. None showed the maker's nick on the right rim. The same defect, Benedict said. And the same language, Louisa replied. She read the closing sentence on each refusal. Continued appeal would indicate improper dependence upon ducal indulgence. I have never used that phrase in a letter, memorandum, or household instruction. Greaves stood at the rear of the room beside Lady Constance. A clerk may have selected formal wording. Then the clerk selected it 3 times across different months, Louisa said. For 3 petitions that never entered the docket. Mr. Toland asked each claimant how the application had been submitted. Mrs. Ward's had gone through her rector. Mr. Pike's had been carried by a retired captain. Mrs. Bells had been sent through the widow of an army surgeon. Different channels. The same disappearance. Did anyone discuss the likely decision before the order arrived? Louisa asked. Mrs. Bell looked toward Lady Constance. Her ladyship visited Darnley 2 days before mine came. She said her grace meant to end the habit of rewarding old regimental attachments. Mr. Pike's weathered hand closed over his hat. She told me much the same. Said Lord Densham's memory had been indulged long enough. Mrs. Ward lowered her eyes. She knew the words before I did. Benedict became very still. All three of you had some connection to Arthur's regiment. Yes, your grace, Pike said. I served under him. Mrs. Ward's husband had ridden in Arthur's troop. Mrs. Bell's son had carried dispatches for the regiment before illness sent him home. The pattern was no longer only administrative. Someone had selected families whose names would strike directly at Benedict's guilt and made Louisa appear cruel to them. Lady Constance spoke softly. Many pensioners have military connections. That hardly proves design. No, Louisa said. It proves a pattern worth following. Mr. Toland returned Mrs. Ward's order to its signed envelope, resealed it, and locked it inside his private case. Mr. Pike and Mrs. Bell retained their originals after signing Mr. Toland's written descriptions of the wax. No transfer occurred. A footman entered carrying a message from Canterbury. The paper bore the mark of Abel Mercer, the seal cutter. Benedict broke the outer seal and read in silence before passing the letter to Mr. Toland. Mercer confirmed that he had cut only one official matrix for the Duchess of Redmarsh. He had never authorized a duplicate. A wax model of the completed design, however, had been collected from his workshop shortly after the wedding. The messenger had carried written instruction from the Redmarsh estate office. Who signed the instruction? Benedict asked. Mr. Toland read the final lines. It came from Mr. Greaves's office. The workshop book names Owen Lister as the man who collected the model. Greaves's face lost color. A wax model was required to verify the finished work against the office design. Where is it now? Louisa asked. I don't know. Where is Owen? Benedict said. Greaves looked toward the windows, where the afternoon light was fading over the service court. I told you. He's unwell. Mr. Hales entered before anyone could answer. Rain marked the shoulders of his coat. His lodgings are empty, your grace. The landlady says Mr. Lister left before dawn yesterday with one valise. He gave no destination. Louisa looked down at Owen's initials between the blank spaces, then at the letter confirming he had carried away the wax model from which another seal might have been made. Somewhere beyond Redmarsh, the missing clerk knew whether he had created the fraud, served it, or fled from the people who had. Benedict's note reached Louisa shortly after breakfast on the 4th of October. It contained no command, only a request that she meet him upon the memorial walk before the household assembled for the day. Louisa read it twice, folded it, and placed it beneath the ribbon of her writing box. Her authentic seal remained locked inside the private desk in her morning room. The small key rested in the pocket of her gown. Mrs. Ward's original refusal order remained sealed inside Mr. Toland's private document case. Owen Lister remained missing. Nothing had moved during the night except rumour. The rain had passed before dawn, leaving the gravel dark and the clipped yews shining beneath a pale sky. Benedict waited beside the low stone wall that separated the memorial path from the ruined chapel arch. He wore no hat. The wind moved one strand of dark hair across his forehead, and for an instant he looked less like the Duke of Redmarsh than a man who had forgotten how to rest. Louisa approached with her oak-painted fan closed in one hand. "You asked to see me." "I did." Benedict looked toward the weathered stone tablet visible through the broken arch. Arthur's name had been carved there after the dispatch reached England. "You said in the chapel that you didn't know what happened." "I know only what I have observed." "Then you should know the rest from me." They began walking. The path curved between yew hedges and old stone urns darkened by rain. Benedict kept enough distance that his sleeve did not brush hers. Arthur wrote to me from Spain in July of 1812. Father had become seriously ill, and Arthur had been offered leave. He wanted to return, but he feared that leaving the regiment would look like cowardice. His voice remained level, yet every word seemed drawn from a place he had kept sealed. He asked what I thought duty required. Louisa did not interrupt. I answered that an Ainsworth didn't abandon his post because home had become difficult. He received my letter 3 days before Salamanca. He remained with the regiment. He died on the 22nd of July. The date settled between them with more weight than the stone memorial behind them. You believe your answer kept him there, Louisa said. It did. You can't know that. He asked whether he should leave. I told him not to. You gave an opinion from England. Arthur made a decision in Spain. Benedict stopped. That distinction has never comforted me. It wasn't meant to comfort you. He looked at her sharply. Louisa met his gaze. I didn't know your brother. I can't absolve you in his place, and I won't pretend your words had no consequence. But grief doesn't give you the right to turn a woman who had no part in his death into an enemy. Benedict's face changed, not with anger, but with the recognition of a wound accurately named. No, he said. It doesn't. Louisa's fingers tightened around the fan. How did Lady Constance know what you wrote? The question drew his eyes back toward the memorial arch after the dispatch arrived. Father was too ill to manage the family papers. Constance took charge of the correspondence. I gave her Arthur's final letter and the copy I had kept of my reply. You trusted her? Completely. Does she still possess them? They should be among the family papers under her keeping. Louisa absorbed the answer. Constance had not merely guessed at Benedict's guilt. She had held the words that created it. Then she has known for 6 years exactly where to press. Benedict's mouth tightened. Yes. And before our wedding. She told me you had asked questions about Arthur's regiment and the pension trust. She said you considered the old claims sentimental obligations that weakened the estate. I asked because I was to become Duchess of Redmarsh. I know that now. Louisa looked ahead along the path. Do you? I am beginning to. The answer was imperfect, but honest. Benedict took another step, then stopped again. I wanted you to be guilty. Louisa felt the admission more deeply than denial would have struck. Why? Because if you were cruel, I didn't have to wonder whether I had been. He did not look away. Every refusal issued in your name gave me another reason not to ask a question. I could call contempt judgment. I could blame you for every name that reminded me of Arthur and never examine what that blame protected. Louisa had imagined many confessions from him during the first year of their marriage. None had been as unsparing as this. Understanding that doesn't repair it, she said. I know. Your grief doesn't excuse the way you treated me. I know that too. Her fan shifted as the wind caught the ribbon. The loop twisted once around the edge of her glove. Benedict noticed. He did not reach for it. He waited while Louisa freed the ribbon herself. Only then did his gaze lower to the silk-bound crack in the pearwood guard. May I? He asked. The question was quiet. Louisa knew he was not asking for the fan. He was asking to touch the hand that held it. For 12 months, nearly every contact between them had been required by ceremony. His arm at a public entrance. His hand at a carriage step. A dance performed under observation. Nothing chosen. She gave one measured nod. Benedict placed his hand over hers where it rested upon the closed fan. His palm was warm despite the cold morning. He did not take the fan, tighten his fingers, or draw her closer. He merely covered her hand with deliberate stillness, acknowledging both her presence and the boundary she had allowed him to cross. Louisa did not withdraw. The touch did not erase the year behind them. It did not promise forgiveness. It only proved that tenderness could exist without command. Benedict lifted his hand first. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me for what you haven't earned. Pain crossed his face, but he accepted the rebuke. I was thanking you for the truth. Footsteps sounded on the gravel before Louisa could answer. Mr. Hales approached with an older gentleman carrying a leather instrument case. Mr. Toland followed several paces behind, his private document case still locked beneath his arm. Your Graces, the steward said, Mr. Abel Mercer of Canterbury. They returned to the estate office, where Lady Constance and Malcolm Greaves were already waiting. Louisa's authentic seal had been brought from her writing desk in its morocco case under her own hand and remained beside her on the table. Mr. Toland did not open Mrs. Ward's envelope. Mercer required only the fresh impression made 2 days earlier, Mr. Toland's written description of the original, and the 2 orders still held by Samuel Pike and Mrs. Bell, which had been brought back by their owners for examination. Mercer studied the impressions through a small lens. He spent longest over the divided bead and the absent maker's nick. One poor impression may blur, he said at last. Repeated defects of the same shape are another matter. Greaves folded his arms. Could pressure create the division beneath the coronet? Once, perhaps. Not with this consistency. Mercer pointed toward Louisa's fresh impression. The official matrix carries a complete bead and a small nick in the right rim. A copy taken from a wax model would lose fine detail. The bead might divide. The maker's nick would likely disappear. Lady Constance's expression remained composed. You speak of possibility, not certainty. Certainty requires the second matrix, Mercer replied. But these refusals were not made by ordinary distortion of Her Grace's seal. The door opened, and a footman entered with a cream-coloured notice on a silver tray. The outer mark belonged to the Canterbury subscribers of the Redmarsh Pension Trust. Benedict broke it and read in silence. Louisa watched his eyes move once across the page, then returned to the first line. A formal meeting has been called at Canterbury Guildhall, he said. The 8th of October. Greaves's gaze lowered. A prudent measure. Benedict continued. Every known refusal bearing the Duchess's authority is to be presented. The subscribers also request that her authentic seal be placed in independent keeping for comparison. Louisa looked at Lady Constance. The older woman's face held grave concern, but not surprise. How quickly they agreed upon the language, Louisa said. Constance lifted her chin. People require reassurance. Before Mr. Mercer had completed his examination. The county won't wait upon private sentiment. Benedict folded the notice. Louisa will speak for herself. Constance turned toward him. Of course. If she's prepared to place her seal beyond her own control. Louisa rested her fingers upon the morocco case but did not open it. I will place evidence where the law and honor require, she said. I will not place my authority wherever fear demands. Across the table, Greaves closed his portfolio with careful hands. Owen Lister was still missing. The counterfeit matrix had not been found. Yet in 3 days, Louisa would enter a public hall where Lady Constance had already taught the room what to suspect. Canterbury received them beneath a low grey sky on the 6th of October, with the cathedral towers rising beyond roofs darkened by recent rain. Louisa travelled in the first Redmarsh carriage with Benedict opposite her and the authentic seal secured in its morocco case inside a small travelling box beside her. The key remained in the pocket of her gown. Mr. Toland followed in a second carriage with his locked private document case, which still contained Mrs. Ward's original refusal order. Mr. Harcourt, the pension trust treasurer, had come separately from his rooms in Canterbury and brought the fee register under his own hand. No record had changed possession on the road. The interviews were held in a private chamber adjoining the Guildhall, where 12 chairs had been arranged in a wide half-circle. Some petitioners came alone. Others brought a daughter, a neighbour, or a former officer willing to confirm service. Louisa sat without a raised desk before her. You are here to explain what happened to your petitions, she said when the last claimant had entered. You are not here to defend the fact that you needed help. Mrs. Ward sat nearest the window. Samuel Pike held his tin document box across his knees. Mrs. and Bell kept both hands around the handle of a plain black bag. Around them were 9 other households whose names filled the missing spaces in Mr. Tolland's copied docket notes. The pattern emerged with painful speed. One widow's husband had served as Arthur's quartermaster. A former trumpeter had lost the use of 2 fingers after the Peninsular campaigns. The mother of a dead dispatch rider had requested assistance with rent. 2 old soldiers had applied for roof repairs. Another claimant had asked for a small allowance after illness ended his work as a groom. Every petition touched Arthur's regiment or someone who had served beside it. Benedict stood near the mantel. With each name, his expression became more still. Louisa did not look at him until the 8th interview ended. "These families weren't chosen at random," she said. Mr. Tolland nodded. "The connection is too consistent." Lady Constance had not been permitted to attend the private questioning. Greaves had objected to his exclusion, but Benedict had upheld the order that neither of them could speak privately with petitioners. Mr. Harcourt alone represented the trust administration. He sat at a side table with his register closed before him. Louisa asked each claimant the same questions. How was the petition submitted? Who acknowledged it? Who warned that it might fail? Who delivered the refusal? The routes varied. Rectors, retired officers, local agents, and widows of former military surgeons had forwarded the claims. The warnings did not vary. In 7 cases, Lady Constance had spoken directly to the petitioner before the refusal arrived. In 3, a woman from her charitable committee had carried the same message. The remaining 2 had heard through estate tenants that Her Grace intended to end old regimental favours. "Did Lady Constance ever say she had spoken with me?" Louisa asked. A former sergeant named Elias Merton shook his head. "Not plainly, Your Grace. She spoke as if she didn't need to." Mrs. Bell looked toward Benedict. "She said Lord Densham's memory had already cost Redmarsh enough." Benedict's hand tightened at his side. Louisa let the silence remain. It belonged to the petitioners, not to his guilt. The delivery route offered a different clue. Most lawful Redmarsh correspondence came through known estate messengers. 5 claimants remembered the same young man bringing their refusal, a narrow-faced rider in a plain brown coat with no Redmarsh badge. "Would you know him again?" Mr. Tolland asked. Samuel Pike answered first. "I would." 3 others agreed. The stranger had carried sealed orders but no petition receipts, no trust ledger, and no authority to answer questions. Louisa turned to Mr. Harcourt. "Does the trust employ an outside messenger?" "Not as a rule." "Did Mr. Greaves authorize one?" "Such expenses would usually appear in the quarterly charges." Harcourt opened the fee register himself. He did not pass it across the table. Instead, he turned the book so Louisa, Benedict, and Mr. Tolland could read while it remained beneath his hand. The figure showed that Greaves received a fixed management allowance and an additional commission when undistributed balances were carried beyond the quarter and reinvested. The sums were not vast by ducal standards, but they were substantial to a solicitor whose private accounts had weakened. Harcourt placed a separate note beside the register. "Mr. Greaves borrowed against expected fees last winter after a marsh drainage speculation failed. The lender notified me because future trust commissions were named as security." Benedict looked at the figures. The more claims refused, the larger the balance he retained. "Yes, Your Grace," Harcourt said. "And the longer the funds remained undistributed, the greater his commission." "That is motive," Louisa said. "Not proof of forgery." Harcourt inclined his head. "Correct." Her refusal to overstate the evidence drew Benedict's gaze. A week earlier, he would have mistaken such restraint for calculation. Now he understood that Louisa's fairness protected even the man most likely to have used her name. The interviews continued until all 12 claimants had spoken. The later cottage allocations were then compared with the vacancies created by the refusals. 3 homes had gone to families connected to Lady Constance's patronage. Yet when questioned, those recipients appeared to know nothing of displaced claims. One widow wept at the suggestion that another family had been denied for her sake. Louisa stopped the questioning at once. "You are not responsible for a decision you were never shown," she said. "No beneficiary will be treated as an accomplice without evidence." By late afternoon, the 12 original refusal orders had been assembled for formal keeping. 11 remained with their owners until that moment. Mr. Toland received them one at a time. Each owner watched as the document was wrapped separately, identified by name and date, and signed across the wrapper. Mrs. Ward's order required a different transfer. Mr. Toland placed his private document case upon the central table and displayed the signed envelope that had remained in his keeping since Redmarsh. Its seals were intact. He opened the case before Louisa, Benedict, Harcourt, Mrs. Ward, and the Guildhall clerk. "This original has not returned to Mrs. Ward's possession since she delivered it at Redmarsh," he said. He removed the envelope, recorded the transfer, and placed it inside a new outer wrapper marked Packet 1. Mrs. Ward signed. Mr. Toland signed. Louisa and Benedict witnessed beneath them. The other 11 packets followed. When the final wrapper had been secured, all 12 were placed inside the Guildhall evidence chest. The clerk locked the first lock. Mr. Toland locked the second. Each retained a different key. "From this moment," Mr. Toland said, "the complete set remains here until the subscribers' meeting tomorrow." Louisa watched the chest close. For the first time, the 12 accusations existed in one lawful place, unable to be altered quietly by any single hand. The return to the Redmarsh townhouse began after dusk. Canterbury's lamps shone against wet paving stones as the carriage moved through the narrowing streets. Louisa sat opposite Benedict, tired enough that restraint required conscious effort. Neither spoke until the Guildhall had fallen behind them. "I accepted every refusal as confirmation," Benedict said. "Of what?" "Of what I had decided you were." Louisa looked through the window. "You didn't decide alone. You accepted Lady Constance's judgment because it asked nothing difficult of you. That may be worse. It was easier." "Yes." He did not defend himself. His hand rested on the seat between them, palm upward. He did not reach for her. He did not ask. Louisa looked at that open hand and remembered the morning on the memorial walk, when he had sought permission before touching her. Accepting comfort would not erase Canterbury's coming danger. It would not promise forgiveness. Slowly, she placed her gloved hand in his. Benedict's fingers closed around hers with restrained warmth. He did not pull her nearer. His thumb rested beside her knuckles, steady and still, while the carriage moved through the rain-dark city. For the first time in their marriage, silence between them did not feel like punishment. It felt like a choice neither had been forced to make. Louisa withdrew her hand when the carriage stopped. Benedict released her at once. A footman waited in the entrance hall with the formal Guildhall notice. The 12 sealed packets would be presented the following evening. Louisa's authentic seal was requested for comparison. Benedict read the line and looked at her. "It remains in your keeping. Until the room decides my keeping is the accusation. They may try." Louisa placed one hand over the key in her pocket. "Then tomorrow we will learn whether you stand beside me when suspicion becomes public." The Guildhall lamps had already been lit when Louisa entered, though evening had not fully settled over Canterbury. 12 sealed packets waited inside the locked evidence chest beneath the clerk's table. Mr. Toland held one key. The Guildhall clerk held the other. The chest had not been opened since the previous afternoon, and the complete set of refusal orders remained beyond the reach of any single hand. Louisa carried her authentic seal in its morocco case inside the small travelling box held by her maid. The key rested in Louisa's pocket. Her oak-painted fan lay closed against her palm. Benedict walked at her right, close enough to make clear that she had not entered alone, yet not so close that anyone could mistake proximity for reconciliation. The assembly had drawn more people than the pension subscribers. Veterans of Arthur's regiment lined the rear wall. Local landowners occupied the benches. Several neighboring families sat beneath the carved civic arms, their attention sharpened by the promise of scandal. Lady Constance stood beside Sir Matthew Ord, grave and silver-clad, as though she had come to endure a sorrow rather than arrange one. Malcolm Greaves waited near the central table with his portfolio closed before him. "Your Grace," Sir Matthew said to Louisa, "the subscribers are grateful that you've attended." "I would have found it difficult to answer questions from another room," Louisa replied. A faint murmur passed through the hall. Benedict's gaze moved across the benches. "All questions concerning the Duchess will be addressed to her directly. No one will speak over her." Sir Matthew inclined his head. "Of course." The clerk recorded the statement. Louisa noticed that another line had already been prepared beneath it. Temporary custody of the Duchess's seal. The space for her signature waited empty. No one had yet asked her consent. The room had already written the action it expected. Greaves opened his portfolio but removed no paper. "Before the sealed refusals are examined, we must address the instrument from which they appear to derive." "They do not derive from mine," Louisa said. "Mr. Mercer has identified repeated differences that ordinary pressure cannot explain." "He has identified differences," Greaves replied. "He has not identified who caused them. Because the second matrix hasn't been found. If one exists." Lady Constance moved closer to the table. "No one wishes to accuse Louisa without evidence. Yet the absence of a second matrix creates another possibility." Louisa met her gaze. "Speak it plainly." Constance's expression held reluctant concern. A person might possess the official seal and still commission a duplicate for decisions she preferred not to issue openly. The accusation passed through the room like cold air. Several heads turned toward Louisa's traveling box. Mrs. Ward, seated beside her daughter, began to rise. Louisa gave her the smallest shake of the head. The widow had already risked enough to keep her home. She would not be required to defend a duchess before the county. "For what purpose would I create an imperfect duplicate?" Louisa asked. Greaves answered. "To distance yourself from unpopular refusals." "Then why preserve the same coronet, wording, and authority?" "Because the orders still required obedience. And after issuing them, I concealed the matrix so well that no one can produce it." "That would be the allegation." "Supported by what?" Greaves spread one hand. "The official seal remains in your sole possession." Louisa glanced at the prepared custody line beneath the clerk's pen. "My possession of my own seal has become evidence against me." Sir Matthew adjusted his spectacles. "Not evidence, Your Grace. A difficulty of appearance. Appearance has governed this matter from the beginning." Benedict stood very still beside her. The words were meant for the room, but they reached him first. Lady Constance turned to him. "Benedict, impartiality must be visible. The subscribers can't compare disputed impressions while the authentic matrix remains controlled by the person under examination." "It has remained locked and witnessed," he said. "Under Louisa's key." "Which is precisely the concern." Benedict looked toward the veterans at the rear of the hall. 12 families linked to Arthur's regiment had been refused in Louisa's name. The counterfeit matrix had not been found. Owen Lister remained missing. Every fact he possessed argued that Louisa had been wronged. Every absence allowed Constance to turn uncertainty into suspicion. Louisa watched the conflict pass across his face. Only the previous evening, his open hand had waited between them in the carriage. She had placed hers into it freely. Now the entire room waited to learn whether that fragile trust mattered more than the appearance of fairness. Benedict looked at Sir Matthew. "What custody is proposed?" The question struck Louisa before the answer came. "Your own, Your Grace," Sir Matthew said. "The seal could be placed in your keeping until Mr. Mercer completes a formal comparison." Louisa turned to Benedict. "You agree?" His jaw tightened. "I believe the seal should be beyond dispute." "My custody is the dispute." "Temporarily." Humiliation is often called temporary by those who do not carry it home. The clerk lowered his eyes to the line already waiting on the page. Benedict's voice dropped. I won't take it from you. It was the right boundary, but not the right choice. Yet you believe I should surrender it. One breath passed. Then another. Yes, he said. Louisa felt something within her become quiet. Not broken. Something broken might still cry out. This was colder. She handed the travelling box key to her maid. Mr. Toland and the Guildhall clerk accompanied the maid into the adjoining chamber. They returned with the box. Louisa unlocked it herself and removed the intact morocco case. The brass matrix remained inside, the complete bead beneath the coronet and the maker's nick on the right rim unchanged. She closed the case and held it for one moment against her palm. The familiar weight had never felt like power before. Only responsibility. Now the room had taught her what its loss meant. She crossed to Benedict. Record the terms before I give it, she said. The clerk took up his pen. The authentic household seal of Louisa Ainsworth, Duchess of Redmarsh, is surrendered at the Duke's request for temporary keeping. It is not tendered as confession, admission, or acknowledgement of improper use. The clerk wrote each word. Louisa read the line before signing. Benedict signed beneath her. Only then did she place the morocco case in his hand. His fingers closed around it slowly. You may hold the instrument, Your Grace, she said. You may not hold my name. Benedict looked as though the small case weighed more than the evidence chest. He placed it inside his dispatch box. The Guildhall clerk watched as he locked the box and retained the key. From that moment, the authentic seal passed into Benedict's custody. Sir Matthew proposed that no refusal packet be opened until Mr. Mercer could conduct the formal comparison with both trustees and petitioners present. The subscribers agreed. The 12 packets remained sealed inside the Guildhall evidence chest. No proof had been tested. No accusation had been resolved. Yet Louisa had already been required to surrender the one object whose misuse had placed her before them. When the meeting ended, Benedict offered his arm. The carriage is waiting. Louisa looked at it but did not take it. I won't return to the town house with you. His hand lowered. Louisa. Tomorrow morning I will leave Canterbury for Havelock Manor. Mr. Toland will continue the inquiry with me there. You needn't leave. Need has nothing to do with it. Around them, subscribers gathered papers while pretending not to listen. Lady Constance stood across the hall, satisfaction hidden beneath solemnity. Louisa lowered her voice, but not enough to spare Benedict the truth. Last night, I placed my hand in yours because you waited for me to choose. Tonight, you placed my authority in doubt because the room expected it. I was trying to preserve the inquiry. You preserved its appearance by sacrificing mine. I didn't banish you. No, Louisa opened her fan. The painted oak branch spread across faded silk, its fracture visible beneath the thread that held it together. You merely removed everything that made remaining honourable. She walked past him without taking his arm. The following morning, her trunk stood closed in the townhouse entrance hall. Her maid waited beside them, and the Havelock carriage had been brought around beneath a pale sky. Benedict came down the stairs with the locked dispatch box in his hand. The morocco case containing Louisa's authentic seal remained inside. He stopped before her. I can return it now. Louisa drew on her gloves. Return it where you took it. Benedict's face tightened. Before the same people. Before the people who watched. Before evidence makes believing me safe. She met his eyes. Until then, Your Grace, keep what you asked for. Then she turned toward the open door, leaving Benedict with her seal, his doubt, and the first consequence he could not command her to soften. Before Louisa's carriage cleared Canterbury, Malcolm Greaves found Owen Lister in the narrow passage behind the Guildhall kitchens. The young clerk wore a plain dark coat and carried no valise. His face had the hollow look of a man who had slept in borrowed rooms and listened for footsteps outside every door. Greaves stood between him and the passage to the street. In one hand he held a parcel wrapped in brown cloth and tied twice with coarse twine. "Take this to the Stour," Greaves said. "Below the mill, where the current deepens." Owen looked at the parcel without accepting it. "What is it?" "Something that should never have remained in the office. You told me the records were secure." "The records are not your concern." Greaves pressed the parcel against Owen's chest until he had no choice but to take it. The shape beneath the cloth was small, heavy, and unmistakable. A brass handle. A round face. Owen's fingers tightened around it. "You want me to throw the matrix into the river?" Greaves's expression did not change. "I did not use that word." "You didn't need to." "Then you understand what must be done." Owen glanced toward the passage mouth. "And if I don't?" Greaves's voice softened. "Then every blank entry will become yours. Every false date. Every missing petition. Lady Constance will remember only that you chose the names. I will remember that you commissioned the cutter. By the time anyone asks for the truth, you will have been dismissed as a dishonest clerk trying to save himself. I didn't choose the names. That distinction will matter only if someone believes you." Owen's face whitened. Greaves stepped back and adjusted one glove. "Ride toward the river. Do not stop at your lodgings. Do not speak to Mr. Toland. When the parcel is gone, return to me." At the end of the passage, a stable lad in Greaves's service pretended to inspect a bridle. Owen saw him, then looked away. He tucked the parcel beneath his coat and walked toward the yard. The lad waited until Owen mounted before following at a distance. Owen took the north road as ordered. For nearly a mile, he allowed the Stour to glitter between the trees ahead. Then, where the road divided behind a stand of alder, he turned sharply south toward the Havelock Road. The stable lad drew rein. He watched Owen disappear beyond the hedges, then wheeled his horse back toward Canterbury. Louisa did not look behind her when the Havelock carriage passed beneath the city gate. Canterbury receded into wet roofs, chimney smoke, and the fading shape of the cathedral towers. Her maid sat beside her. Across from them, Mr. Avery, the senior servant from Havelock Manor, maintained the solemn discretion of a man who understood that his mistress had not fled. She had withdrawn from a house where remaining would have required her to pretend that public doubt had no private cost. The journey south took 2 hours. Louisa's trunks followed in a second carriage. She carried no original trust document, no petition, and no seal. The authentic matrix remained in Benedict's locked dispatch box. He would take it back to Redmarsh Abbey under his own custody. The absence of the Morocco case felt more intimate than the absence of jewelry. It was not the object alone. It was the fact that Benedict had accepted her trust the previous evening, then surrendered it to the room when trust became inconvenient. Havelock Manor stood beyond bare elms and clipped hedges, smaller than Redmarsh Abbey and free of its ancestral weight. The entrance doors opened before the carriage fully stopped. No curious subscribers waited beneath the portico. No one studied Louisa's hands for guilt. The housekeeper welcomed her without asking when she would return to her husband. Louisa changed from her travelling dress, ate enough luncheon to prevent concern, and entered her father's old study before weariness could persuade her to delay. Mr. Toland arrived from Canterbury shortly afterward. He carried only copied docket notes, written descriptions, and his independent correspondence. The 12 original refusal packets remained sealed inside the Guildhall evidence chest under 2 keys, one held by him and the other by the Guildhall clerk. Mrs. Ward's original remained packet 1 within that complete set. Nothing had followed Louisa to Havelock except the inquiry itself. "His Grace has issued a public notice," Mr. Toland said. He placed a folded copy before her. Benedict stated that the Duchess of Redmarsh had not been banished, deprived of income, stripped of title, or removed from household authority. She had taken no trust record from Canterbury. The 12 refusal packets remained under independent keeping. The authentic seal alone had passed into the Duke's custody because he had requested it before witnesses. Louisa read the notice twice. It did not describe her departure as guilt. It did not ask her to return. It named Benedict's responsibility for the seal without softening it. "Circulate it," she said. "Add one sentence." Mr. Toland took up his pen. "Which sentence?" "The Duchess will continue examining the petitions from Havelock Manor." A faint approval entered his face. "Mr. Greaves may object. Then he will know where to direct the objection." For 6 days, Louisa worked from morning until the candles shortened. She compared copied trust allocations with the 12 missing serial numbers. She asked which cottage had become available after each rejection, who recommended the new occupant, and whether that family knew another claim had been displaced. The first pattern appeared at Westmere. After Mrs. Ward's refusal, the cottage had been promised to the widowed cousin of a woman who served on Lady Constance's charitable committee. At North Fen, the vacancy created by Samuel Pike's rejected repair claim had strengthened a tenancy favoured by one of Constance's dependents. Near Darnley, a household connected to her former companion had received priority. Yet the beneficiaries themselves had not known why their claims advanced. One woman wrote in horror that she would never have accepted a roof taken from another widow. Louisa placed that letter apart. "They are not accomplices," she said. "They were used to make patronage look like mercy." Mr. Toland nodded. "Which keeps the method socially respectable. And makes the injured families resent one another instead of the person controlling access." Louisa drafted formal questions for Mr. Harcourt regarding dates, commissions, and the marsh drainage debt. She asked Mr. Mercer to preserve his workshop book. She instructed Mr. Toland to send Owen Lister an invitation to give a statement under independent protection. The wording promised no immunity, money, or position. It required that any paper or object in Owen's possession be surrendered directly to Mr. Toland, unopened, before witnesses. On the 4th day, a letter from Benedict arrived under his private ducal seal. He wrote that Louisa's authentic matrix remained inside the Morocco case, locked in his dispatch box at Redmarsh Abbey. Mr. Hales and 2 servants had witnessed the box's arrival from Canterbury. Benedict offered to bring the seal to Havelock immediately and return it before witnesses of Louisa's choosing. Louisa read the offer beside the window while rain traced the glass. It was sincere. It was also insufficient. She turned the sheet over and wrote beneath his final line, "Return it where you took it, before the people who watched. My authority was not questioned in private. It cannot be restored in private. Return it before the evidence is opened, not after innocence becomes safe to believe." Mr. Toland read the wording only because she asked him to witness it. That condition leaves His Grace no protection if the case fails. That is why it matters. Benedict's reply arrived the next afternoon. It contained one word. "Agreed." Louisa folded the letter and placed it in her writing box. She did not mistake agreement for repair, but she allowed herself to recognize that he had not argued. On the evening of the 14th of October, rain began before dusk. Far north of Havelock, Owen Lister rode with the brown parcel pressed beneath his coat. The cloth remained dry against his waistcoat while water streamed from his hat and shoulders. He had spent 6 days changing lodgings, watching roads, and trying to decide whether the river or the truth offered the greater danger. Behind him, no rider followed now. The stable lad had already returned to Canterbury with news of the road Owen had taken. Ahead, through the rain, the upper windows of Havelock Manor shone between the trees. Owen lowered his head and urged the exhausted horse toward the light, while somewhere behind him Malcolm Greaves learned that the object meant to vanish beneath the Stour had not reached the river. Owen Lister reached Havelock Manor shortly after 4 o'clock on the 15th of October, soaked through at the shoulders and pale enough that the footman who admitted him sent at once for Mr. Toland. Louisa entered the library before the young clerk had removed his wet outer coat. The brown cloth parcel remained pressed beneath one arm. Its wrapping was perfectly dry. Mr. Avery, the Havelock steward, stood near the door with 2 senior servants beside him. Mr. Toland cleared the long table of every object except paper, sand, sealing wax, and the household Bible used for sworn statements. "You understand," the solicitor said, "that anything you say may expose your own conduct." Owen looked at the parcel. "I do." Her Grace has offered no immunity, money, employment, or protection from lawful consequence. She hasn't offered me anything. Louisa took the chair nearest the window and left the head of the table to Mr. Toland. You will be protected from private intimidation while you give your statement, she said. That is all I can promise. Owen nodded. His hands trembled once before he controlled them. Mr. Toland recorded the hour, the names of every witness, the condition of the cloth, and the 2 knots in the coarse twine. Did you open this parcel? He asked. No. Did you see Mr. Greaves place anything inside it? I saw the shape before he wrapped it. Describe only what you saw. A brass handle and a round face. Small enough to hide beneath a coat. Mr. Toland cut the twine. He unfolded the brown cloth 1 layer at a time while every witness watched his hands. The object within was a brass seal matrix. From across the table, the ducal coronet and surrounding device appeared close enough to Louisa's household seal that an ordinary petitioner would never have doubted it. Beneath the coronet, however, the single bead was divided into 2 uneven halves. The right rim carried no maker's nick. Louisa did not reach for it. Her authentic seal remained inside Benedict's locked dispatch box at Redmarsh Abbey. That is not my matrix, she said. Mr. Toland leaned over the object without pressing it into wax. No test impression will be made here. We record only what can be seen before formal examination. He described the visible marks, then turned to Owen. When did you first see this instrument? Last winter, after it came back from the cutter. Who arranged the commission? Mr. Greaves. Through whom? Through me. Owen looked directly at Louisa for the first time. I collected the wax model from Mr. Mercer's workshop after your official seal was finished. Mr. Greaves gave me written instruction and said the office required the model to verify the design. What happened next? I carried it to a cutter outside Canterbury. He was told it was for a private memorial seal. He saw only the wax model and Mr. Greaves's written specifications. I don't believe he knew it belonged to the Duchess's household. Did you collect the finished matrix? Yes. Who received it? Mr. Greaves. Mr. Toland's pen moved steadily. What part did Lady Constance play? Owen swallowed. She supplied the names. Which names? Petitioners connected to Lord Denham's regiment. She said His Grace would believe those refusals had come from the Duchess because he would think she wished to end the old obligations. Louisa felt the cruelty of the method more sharply than the insult to herself. Constance had chosen Arthur's soldiers not merely because they needed money, but because their names would make Benedict's guild eager to condemn his wife. Who prepared the wording? Louisa asked. Lady Constance dictated phrases. Mr. Greaves altered them to sound official. Who sealed the orders? Mr. Greaves. Who dated them? I did. Who left the blank spaces in the docket? Owen lowered his head. I did. No excuse followed. Louisa respected the absence of pleading without mistaking it for innocence. Did you select the petitioners? She asked. No. Did you remove the original petition packets? No. Mr. Greaves took them from the chest after the quarter reviews. Where did he put them? I don't know. Did you know about his commissions from the undistributed balances? Not until recently. I knew he was in debt, but I didn't know the amount. Did you know which families received the cottages afterward? No. Mr. Toland paused. Why did you keep the matrix? Owen looked toward the rain against the windows. Mr. Greaves told me to throw it into the Stour below the mill. He said that if I didn't, every false entry would become mine. I understood then that he meant to say I had made the seal, chosen the names, and acted alone. Why should anyone believe that you did not? Mr. Avery asked. Owen turned toward him. They shouldn't believe me without proof. The workshop book will show I acted under Mr. Greaves's instruction. The trust books will show his fees. The cottage allocations will show Lady Constance's recommendations. And the petitioners can tell you she knew the refusals before they arrived. Louisa had already seen those patterns. Owen's words did not create the case. They connected evidence that existed beyond him. That distinction mattered. Mr. Toland wrote the statement in full, read every line aloud, and corrected only the points Owen challenged. Owen then placed one hand upon the Bible and swore that the account was true to the best of his knowledge. He signed beneath the final sentence. Mr. Avery and the two servants signed as witnesses. Only after the statement was complete did Mr. Toland wrap the counterfeit matrix in clean cloth, place it inside a small evidence box, and seal the lid across 3 points. Louisa, Mr. Avery, and Owen signed the written record of delivery. Mr. Toland locked the box inside his document case and kept the key on his person. The counterfeit matrix had passed from Greaves to Owen, from Owen to Mr. Toland, and nowhere else. A footman entered quietly. "His Grace has arrived, Your Grace." Louisa had sent Benedict a note when Owen first reached Havelock, but had asked that he wait until the statement was secured. "He may come in." Benedict entered without haste. His gaze found Louisa first, then Owen, then the locked case beside Mr. Toland. "Is the parcel secured?" he asked. "Yes," Mr. Toland said. "The contents are now in my independent keeping. Mr. Lister's statement has been signed and witnessed." Benedict looked at Owen. "You understand that cooperation doesn't erase your part?" "I do, Your Grace." "Then no one will need to lie in order to protect you." Owen's expression changed at the unexpected fairness of the answer. Before anyone could speak again, voices sounded in the entrance hall. The butler appeared at the library door. "Mr. Malcolm Greaves requests immediate admission." Benedict's face hardened. "He may enter." Greaves came in with rain darkening the shoulders of his coat. His professional calm failed for one brief instant when he saw Owen seated at the table. "That man has taken property from my office." Mr. Toland rested one hand on his locked case. "A parcel was surrendered to me unopened. Its contents are now recorded under witnesses." Greaves took a step toward Owen. Benedict moved between them. The gesture was quiet and absolute. "You will address Mr. Lister through Mr. Toland." "Your Grace, the boy is a frightened clerk attempting to save himself." "That may be true. It doesn't entitle you to question him alone." Greaves looked at the solicitor's case. "The matrix belongs to the Redmarsh office." Silence fell. Louisa rose. Mr. Toland did not name the object. Greaves realized his error too late. "I was told what he carried." "By whom?" "A stable lad saw him leave Canterbury." "The lad saw a parcel beneath a coat," Louisa said. "How did you know it contained a matrix?" Greaves's face lost all warmth. "Because Lister had access to office property." "Which property?" Benedict asked. Greaves said nothing. Mr. Toland recorded the exchange in the margin of Owen's statement. Greaves looked from the pen to Benedict. "You are building a case upon the fear of a dishonest subordinate." "No," Louisa said. "We are building it upon a workshop record, blank entries, financial motive, patronage allocations, petitioner testimony, an unopened parcel, and what you knew before anyone told you." Greaves turned toward the door. "You will regret allowing this performance to proceed." Benedict did not raise his voice. "You are dismissed from every Redmarsh office until the trustees examine the evidence. You will not enter the estate office, speak privately with a petitioner, or direct any servant to remove a record." Greaves stopped, but did not turn. "Lady Constance will have something to say. She may say it before witnesses." Greaves left without bowing. Twilight had deepened by the time a second messenger arrived. He brought a sealed letter addressed to Benedict in Lady Constance's hand. Benedict opened it in Louisa's presence. The paper contained no denial. Constance promised that if he defended his wife publicly, all Kent would hear Arthur's final request and the copied reply Benedict had entrusted to her after Salamanca. She would say Louisa had learned his guilt and used it to govern him. Benedict folded the letter once. His hands were controlled, but the color had left his face. Louisa looked at him across the table. She believes shame will silence you. Benedict placed the letter beside Mr. Tolland's record. It has already silenced me for 6 years. He lifted his eyes to hers. It won't decide for me again. For 4 days after Owen Lister surrendered the counterfeit matrix, Benedict did not ask to see Louisa. He wrote only when an action required her knowledge. On the 16th of October, he informed her that Malcolm Greaves had been formally suspended from every Redmarsh office and forbidden access to the estate records. On the 17th, he sent copies of notices delivered to the trust subscribers, correcting the suggestion that Louisa had abandoned Canterbury under suspicion. On the 18th, he reported that Lady Constance had been denied private communication with petitioners, clerks, tenants, and charitable committees connected to the disputed cottages. Each letter stated facts. None asked when Louisa would return. None mentioned the prayer in the chapel, the hand she had placed in his during the carriage journey, or the embrace that had not yet happened. The authentic seal remained inside its Morocco case, locked in Benedict's dispatch box at Redmarsh Abbey. Mr. Hales and 2 household witnesses had recorded its arrival from Canterbury. The 12 original refusal packets remained sealed in the Guildhall evidence chest under 2 keys. Mr. Tolland kept the counterfeit matrix and Owen signed statement inside his locked document case. Mr. Harcourt retained the fee register under his own hand. No object moved. No record changed custody. Benedict's restraint could not restore trust, but it prevented another violation of it. Louisa read each letter at the old desk in her father's study, then filed it beneath the previous one. She had expected Benedict's remorse to arrive with demands. A plea for forgiveness. A request that she save him from scandal. An argument that husband and wife must face the county together. Instead, he allowed distance to remain where he had created it. The absence of pressure made room for a more difficult truth. She missed him. Not the Duke who had regarded her with contempt. Not the man who had taken her seal before witnesses. She missed the Benedict who had asked permission before touching her hand, who had stood between Greaves and Owen without claiming either man innocent, and who had finally named his own shame without making it hers to soothe. Missing him did not mean she trusted him. It meant pain had ceased to be the only feeling he awakened. On the morning of the 19th, Mr. Tolland brought confirmation from Canterbury. Mr. Harcourt had corroborated the commission entries and the debt secured against Greaves's future fees. Abel Mercer had examined Mr. Tolland's written description of the counterfeit matrix and confirmed that the visible split bead and absent maker's nick were consistent with a copy made from a wax model. He had not created an impression from it. That test would wait for the formal meeting. His Grace has asked whether you'll receive him, Mr. Tolland said. Louisa rested her fingers upon the closed fan beside her papers. Did he say why? Only that he wishes to speak before further arrangements are made. Is he alone? Yes. Louisa looked toward the rain-washed windows. For days was not long enough to repair a year. It was long enough to show whether a man could act correctly without applause. I'll receive him in the blue drawing room. Benedict arrived shortly after 2 o'clock. He entered without his usual ducal composure. Not because his dress or posture lacked control, but because he carried no armor of certainty. Louisa stood beside the cold fireplace. Her oak-painted fan rested on the mantel, closed. She had placed it there deliberately so that neither of them could use the familiar object as refuge. Benedict stopped several feet away. Thank you for seeing me. You asked to speak. I did. He looked toward the chair nearest her, then back at Louisa. May I sit? The question was ordinary. Its restraint was not. Yes. They sat opposite one another with a low table between them. Benedict did not begin with Constance, Greaves, or Owen. I believed the worst of you because it was convenient. Louisa's hands remained still in her lap. That isn't new information. No. But I have not yet said all of it without hiding behind what others did. He drew one measured breath. Constance deceived me. Greaves used my household and my authority. Owen falsified entries. Those facts explain the method. They don't excuse my choice. Louisa watched him carefully. Which choice? To prefer contempt over inquiry. His voice did not rise. I excluded you from records that carried your name. Then I judged you for decisions you had never seen. I treated every petitioner connected to Arthur as proof that you meant harm, because blaming you allowed me to preserve the story I had told myself about grief, duty, and betrayal. You did more than believe a story. I know. Benedict's gaze held hers. At Canterbury, I asked you to surrender your seal because I feared the room would distrust the inquiry if I did not. I told myself I was protecting the truth. In fact, I protected my appearance as an impartial duke by placing the cost upon you. The accuracy of it hurt more than a softened apology would have done. Louisa looked away for one moment. You knew what surrender meant to me. Not fully. You knew enough. Yes. He accepted the word without defense. Louisa turned back to him. Do you regret it because the counterfeit matrix was found? I regretted it before Owen reached Havelock. Would you return the seal if he withdrew his statement tomorrow? Yes. If Mr. Mercer refused to swear that the second matrix made the orders? Yes. If the subscribers still believed I commissioned it? Benedict's face tightened, but his answer did not hesitate. Yes. Louisa leaned back slightly. Why? Because it is yours. That answer should have existed at Guildhall. It should have existed on our wedding day. Silence entered the room. Benedict did not attempt to fill it. Outside, carriage wheels passed along the wet drive and faded beyond the trees. Louisa had spent a year watching him turn silence into punishment. Now he remained within it without using discomfort to force her mercy. I will not return to Redmarsh because you've apologized, she said. I know. You will return the seal in the same room where you took it. Yes. Before the evidence chest is opened. Yes. The 12 petitions will be heard again by trustees who do not answer to Greaves, Lady Constance, or the Redmarsh Estate Office. I have already asked Mr. Tolan to prepare that arrangement. Louisa's eyes narrowed. Asked or ordered? Asked. The subscribers must consent, and the petitioners must be allowed to object. It was the correct answer. She resented the relief it gave her. I will remain at Havelock as long as I choose. Yes. You will not use our marriage settlement, society, or my title to compel my return. No. Benedict's hands rested open upon his knees. I will not ask you to come back until you tell me I may ask. Louisa studied his face. What do you want from me today? Nothing you owe. That isn't an answer. He looked down once, then met her eyes again. I want you to know that I am sorry without believing sorrow entitles me to comfort. I want you to know I will restore what I took even if you never forgive me. And I want to say the thing I am most ashamed to say. Louisa waited. I am afraid I have begun to understand how deeply I could love you only after teaching you not to trust me. The word struck the place within her that had been changing during the 4 quiet days. Benedict did not call the feeling love. He did not ask her to name her own. He only exposed the fear and left it with her. Louisa rose. Benedict stood at once but did not approach. You should go, she said. Pain moved across his face. Of course. He bowed his head and turned toward the door. Louisa watched him take 2 steps. Then she crossed the space between them. Benedict. He stopped. When he faced her, she placed both hands against his coat and leaned into him. For one stunned moment, he remained completely still. Louisa felt the restraint in his body, the effort not to claim more than she had offered. She slid her arms around him. Only when she tightened them did Benedict lift his own arms and hold her. His embrace was firm but careful, one hand between her shoulder blades and the other resting above her waist. He did not kiss her hair. He did not whisper gratitude. he simply held her as though the privilege required silence. Louisa closed her eyes. The year between them did not disappear. The public wound at Canterbury did not close. Yet for the first time, she allowed herself to stand inside his arms without feeling that dignity required escape. When she stepped back, Benedict released her immediately. Neither spoke of forgiveness. Neither spoke of return. Benedict left Havelock without asking for another moment. Louisa remained in the blue drawing room after the sound of his carriage had faded. The emptiness he left behind was not the old loneliness. It was sharper, warmer, and far more dangerous, because now she knew exactly whose absence she felt. 3 days after Benedict left Havelock without asking for forgiveness, Mr. Toland arrived with the proposed order for the final Guildhall meeting. Louisa read it in the morning room while rain tapped lightly against the windows. The document listed the sequence of examination, the witnesses to be called, and the objects to remain under separate keeping. The 12 refusal packets would stay sealed in the Guildhall evidence chest until the meeting. Mr. Harcourt would retain the fee register. Mr. Toland would bring the counterfeit matrix and Owen Lister's signed statement in his locked document case. The authentic seal remained at Redmarsh Abbey inside its Morocco case, secured within Benedict's dispatch box. Nothing had moved. Only one line troubled her. The Duke of Redmarsh will address the subscribers after the material evidence has been examined. That isn't what we agreed, Louisa said. Mr. Toland adjusted his spectacles. His Grace saw the same difficulty. He offered her a second sheet. Benedict had crossed out the sentence in his own hand. Beneath it he had written, "The Duke will speak first. The authentic seal will be returned before any evidence case is opened." Louisa read the correction twice. He changed it without knowing whether Mr. Mercer's comparison will succeed. Yes. And without knowing whether Owen will maintain his statement. Yes. Mr. Toland's voice softened. He said that if the order depended upon proof, then it was not restoration. It was convenience. Louisa folded the sheet carefully. "Where is he?" "In the west drawing room. He would not enter until you agreed to receive him." Benedict stood by the long windows when Louisa came in. He wore a dark morning coat and carried no papers. The distance between them felt different from the distance of their first year. Then, silence had been a wall he built and expected her to endure. Now it was space he refused to cross without invitation. "Mr. Toland showed me the revised order," she said. "I should have written it correctly the first time." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was still thinking like a man preparing a defense." Benedict turned from the window. "Then I remember that I have no right to defend myself before I repair what I did to you." Louisa held the folded order at her side. "Do you understand that returning the seal won't return the year?" "Yes." "It won't promise that I will live at Redmarsh again." "I know." "It won't make the marriage whole." No, his answers carried no impatience. Louisa moved nearer, though several feet remained between them. Her oak-painted fan rested closed in one hand. "At Canterbury, you said you wanted the seal beyond dispute. I said what sounded honourable while choosing the easy additioner. And now? Now I know the question was never whether society trusted the seal in your possession. The question was whether I trusted you when trust cost me approval." He looked at her directly. "I failed." The honesty no longer surprised her. That made it more dangerous. "You heard me pray," Louisa said. "You saw compassion where you expected ambition. How do I know you haven't fallen in love with that moment instead of with me?" Benedict's expression changed. "Not wounded. Attentive. Because the woman in the chapel is not the only woman I know now." "Then tell me whom you know." He stepped no closer. "I know the woman who let Mrs. Ward accuse her before a room full of witnesses and still protected the widow from shame. I know the woman who refused to touch disputed evidence until its keeping was secured. I know the woman who found 12 people the estate had erased and asked each of them what happened instead of telling them what to say." Louisa's fingers tightened around the fan. Benedict continued. I know the woman who would not call innocent beneficiaries accomplices because cruelty would have made the case easier. I know the woman who protected Owen from private intimidation but refused to purchase his testimony with mercy she had no right to promise. I know the woman who left Canterbury in daylight because she would not let anyone call dignity concealment. His voice lowered. And I know the woman who embraced me without pretending the embrace was forgiveness. Louisa felt her breath catch. Benedict did not look away. I love you, Louisa. No title stood between them. No explanation followed the words. He did not use Arthur, guilt, marriage, or repentance as a bridge. He simply placed the truth before her and waited. Louisa had imagined hearing those words during the first months after their wedding. In those imagined moments, they had always healed something instantly. Reality was quieter. Love did not erase the empty chair at their anniversary dinner. It did not remove the memory of surrendering her seal while the county watched. Yet it gave those wounds a future beyond themselves. She lifted one hand and placed her fingertips against Benedict's face. He closed his eyes for a single breath, then opened them. I love you, Benedict. The confession trembled only at the end. I don't know when I began. Perhaps before I understood how much it would hurt. He covered neither her hand nor the distance between them. You don't have to return because you love me. I know. You don't have to share my rooms. I know. You don't have to decide today what our marriage becomes. Louisa searched his face. And if I never become the wife you expected? I no longer want the wife I expected. The answer loosened something in her chest. Benedict glanced at her mouth, then returned his gaze to her eyes. May I kiss you? The question was steady, but his restraint was not effortless. Louisa could see it in the tension of his shoulders and the careful stillness of his hands. She could have answered with one word. Instead, she took the final step herself. Yes. Benedict touched her first at the waist, lightly enough that she could withdraw. Louisa did not. She slid her free hand to his shoulder and lifted her face. His mouth met hers with a tenderness that made restraint feel more intimate than urgency. The kiss was warm, unhurried, and brief enough to remain a promise rather than a claim. When they parted, Benedict did not follow her for another. His forehead rested near hers without touching. Louisa opened her eyes. That changes nothing about Canterbury. No, you will still speak first. Yes. And return the seal before proof. Yes. A faint, almost disbelieving smile touched her mouth. Then perhaps it changes one thing. What? I no longer doubt whether I want you beside me when you do it. For the next 9 days, desire did not become haste. Benedict returned to Redmarsh. Louisa remained at Havelock. They exchanged letters, but none used affection to avoid the work ahead. Witnesses were summoned. Petitioners were offered transport and lodging. Mr. Mercer confirmed he would conduct the wax comparison in public. Mr. Harcourt retained the fee register. Mr. Toland kept the counterfeit matrix and Owen signed statement under lock. The 12 refusal packets remained sealed inside the Guildhall evidence chest. No person gained control of more than one chain of proof. Benedict did not ask when Louisa would return home. Louisa did not promise that she would. On the 1st of November, Benedict entered the Redmarsh estate office with Mr. Hales and 2 household witnesses. His dispatch box stood on the central table. The record from Canterbury showed when the authentic seal had entered his possession. Benedict unlocked the box. Inside lay the intact Morocco case. He opened it only far enough for the witnesses to confirm that Louisa's brass matrix remained within, its handle and fitted velvet unchanged. Then he closed the case, returned it to the dispatch box for the journey, and signed the written record of delivery. Mr. Hales and both witnesses signed beneath him. Benedict carried the lockbox to Canterbury himself. He did not stop at Havelock. Louisa travelled separately the same afternoon with Mr. Toland's arrangements in her carriage. By dusk, both had reached the Redmarsh town house. They met in the entrance hall, where Benedict still held the dispatch box. He did not offer to open it privately. "Tomorrow," he said. "Before them all." Louisa nodded. A courier entered behind them, rain shining on his shoulders. He brought news from the Guildhall. Lady Constance had arrived with several county subscribers, 2 neighbouring families, and a retired magistrate invited to witness the proceedings. She had already begun telling those assembled that Benedict was surrendering judgment to a wife who had learned how to govern his guilt. Benedict read the message and handed it to Louisa. "She wants the room decided before we enter it." Louisa folded the paper. "Then don't persuade them first." "What should I do?" She looked at the locked dispatch box between them. "Tell the truth before it becomes safe. Then give me back what you took." The Guildhall was already full when Benedict and Louisa entered on the morning of the 2nd of November. Trustees and subscribers occupied the front benches. Petitioners sat together along the eastern wall. Veterans of Arthur's regiment stood behind them, their worn coats and old campaign medals lending the room a gravity no titled guest could imitate. Lady Constance had placed herself near Sir Matthew Ord, with several neighbouring families behind her and the retired magistrate seated at the clerk's right. Malcolm Greaves stood apart, no longer at the central table but close enough to watch every document brought into the room. The meeting was not a criminal trial. Sir Matthew stated that plainly before the clerk opened the record. The subscribers had authority to examine the conduct of the trust, preserve its books, remove officers, and refer suspected crimes to the magistrates. They had no power to convict a man of forgery. Even so, every face turned toward Louisa as though judgment had already begun. The 12 original refusal packets remained sealed inside the Guildhall evidence chest. The clerk held one key. Mr. Toland held the other. Mr. Harcourt sat with the fee register beneath his own hand. Mr. Toland's locked document case contained Owen Lister's signed statement and the sealed box holding the counterfeit matrix. Benedict carried the dispatch box from Redmarsh himself. Inside it lay Louisa's authentic seal in the intact Morocco case. No evidence had yet been opened. Sir Matthew rose. "Your Grace, the subscribers are prepared to hear the material findings." "They will hear me first," Benedict said. Lady Constance turned sharply. "Benedict, this isn't the place for private remorse." "No," he replied. "It is the place where private failure became public harm." He moved to the center of the floor without notes. Louisa remained near the petitioners, her oak-painted fan closed in one hand. Benedict looked first at Mrs. Ward, then at the other families whose names had been removed from the docket. "Before any document is examined, I must state what no evidence can decide for me. I judged the Duchess of Redmarsh without asking her an honest question. I allowed her authority to be used while excluding her from the records that carried it. I accepted every refusal connected to my brother's regiment as proof of her cruelty because that belief protected me from examining my own." The room had become utterly still. Lady Constance knew the contents of Arthur's final letter and my copied reply because I entrusted those family papers to her after Salamanca. No one stole that knowledge from me. I gave it to her, and for 6 years I allowed shame to govern my judgment. Constance's face hardened. "You speak under your wife's influence." Benedict did not look at her. "At the earlier meeting, I asked Louisa to surrender her seal because I wished the inquiry to appear impartial. I placed the cost of that appearance upon the woman whose dignity I should have protected. No one compelled me. The fault was mine." He placed the dispatch box on the clerk's table. Mr. Hales and the 2 Redmarsh witnesses stepped forward. The clerk read the written record confirming when the box had left Redmarsh Abbey and that the Morocco case had remained intact. Benedict unlocked the dispatch box, removed the case, and carried it to Louisa. "This is yours," he said. "It is returned before any evidence is opened, without condition and without requiring you to prove innocence first." The clerk wrote the words into the official record. Louisa accepted the Morocco case. She opened it beneath the witness's eyes. The brass matrix rested in its fitted velvet, unchanged. The complete bead beneath the coronet and the maker's nick at the right rim were visible. Louisa closed the case and retained it in her own hand. Only then did she look toward Sir Matthew. Now the evidence may be examined. Mr. Toland opened his locked document case. He removed the sealed evidence box containing the counterfeit matrix and displayed the signatures across its lid. They were intact. After the witnesses confirmed them, he broke the seals and placed the brass instrument upon a clean cloth. Abel Mercer stepped forward with fresh wax, a lens, and 2 sheets of paper. He produced one impression from Louisa's authentic matrix while she watched. The coronet appeared clean. Beneath it sat one complete bead. The maker's nick marked the right rim. Mr. Mercer then produced an impression from the second matrix. The bead divided into 2 uneven halves. The right rim carried no nick. A murmur spread through the benches. "The difference is not caused by pressure," Mercer said. "It lies in the instruments themselves." Mr. Toland and the clerk unlocked the Guildhall evidence chest together. Packet 1 was removed first. The clerk read the wrapper aloud. Mrs. Elspeth Ward. Original refusal order. Transferred from Mr. Toland's private keeping on the 7th of October before named witnesses. The signatures and outer seals remained intact. Mrs. Ward confirmed her own signature. Mr. Toland opened the packet and placed the order beneath Mercer's lens. The wax bore the divided bead and no maker's nick. It matched the counterfeit impression. The remaining 11 packets were opened in sequence. Each wrapper was identified before its order emerged. Each refusal carried the same repeated defects. By the 6th, Greaves had ceased watching Louisa. By the 12th, he was watching the door. Mr. Toland then read Owen Lister's statement. He limited himself to what Owen had personally done and seen. Owen had collected the wax model under written instruction from Greaves's office. He had carried it to a cutter who believed he was making a private memorial seal. He had dated false orders and left blank serial spaces. Greaves had sealed the refusals. Lady Constance had supplied the names and phrases. Owen did not know where the removed petitions had gone, and the statement did not pretend otherwise. Mr. Mercer's workshop book confirmed the collection of the wax model. Mr. Harcourt opened the fee register and showed that carried balances increased Greaves's commissions. He also produced the notice of debt secured against those future fees after the failed marsh drainage speculation. Copies of cottage allocation showed that 3 vacancies had passed into Lady Constance's patronage network. None of the beneficiaries had known that earlier claims were displaced. "A frightened clerk will say anything," Greaves declared. "Then his statement must stand or fall beside evidence that does not depend upon him," Louisa said. Mr. Toland read the recorded exchange from Havelock. Greaves had arrived demanding office property before anyone had named the object in Owen's parcel. Mrs. Ward, Samuel Pike, and Anne Bell then testified that Lady Constance had known the refusals before they were delivered. Constance rose. "I advised petitioners because the Duchess had shown no interest in them." Louisa met her gaze. "You told them what I would decide before their petitions reached me. You were never suited to Redmarsh authority. Then you counterfeited it rather than risk what I might do with it." Constance turned to Benedict. Arthur would have despised this weakness. Benedict's face remained calm. "Arthur is not here to serve as your weapon." Sir Matthew called the trustees to order. The formal finding was read and signed. Louisa's household authority had been counterfeited. All 12 refusal orders were void. Every petition would be heard again by trustees unconnected with Greaves, Lady Constance, or the Redmarsh Estate Office. The retired magistrate directed that the relevant books, Owen's statement, the counterfeit matrix, and the copied workshop entry be preserved for lawful examination. The Guildhall beadle moved only to secure the documents and maintain order. Benedict removed Greaves from every Redmarsh position and revoked Lady Constance's authority over tenants, charities, servants, and family papers. Then he stepped back. The final action belonged to Louisa. She opened the morocco case, took up her restored seal, and issued a written protection under her own hand. No petitioner would be evicted, deprived of allowance, or penalized while the claims were reheard. When the clerk asked what should be entered regarding the Duchess's conduct, Sir Matthew looked toward Benedict. Louisa did not. Mrs. Ward rose before any titled man could answer. Write that Her Grace listened when the rest of us had learned not to expect it. Samuel Pike stood beside her. Then Mrs. Bell. One by one, the petitioners and the veterans behind them rose. Louisa held her seal in one hand and the cracked fan in the other. For the first time since her marriage, the room did not see a duchess because Benedict had chosen to defend her. It saw the woman who had defended them. The morning after the Guildhall inquiry, Louisa returned to Havelock Manor rather than Redmarsh Abbey. No one attempted to stop her. Benedict stood beside her carriage in the Canterbury Yard while Mr. Toland supervised the transfer of the counterfeit matrix, Owen Lister's signed statement, the workshop entry, and the relevant trust records into the keeping of independent counsel for presentation before the magistrates. The authentic household seal remained with Louisa in its Morocco case. She held it upon her lap during the journey south, not as a trophy, but as a responsibility restored without condition. Benedict did not ask when she would come home. "I'll write only when there is something you should know," he said. Louisa looked at him through the open carriage door. "Write when there is something true to say." "I will." The lawful consequences unfolded without haste and without spectacle. Malcolm Greaves was removed from every Redmarsh office. His access to trust accounts ended at once, and the evidence of forgery, falsified entries, and concealed petitions was delivered to the magistrates through counsel unconnected with the Ainsworth household. In time, his right to practice was stripped from him, and no estate in Kent would again place records or tenants beneath his control. Lady Constance lost authority over servants, charities, tenant recommendations, and family correspondence. Benedict ordered a witnessed inventory of every cabinet she had governed. Arthur's final letter and the copied reply Benedict had entrusted to her after Salamanca were found among the family papers, intact and tied beneath 6 years of estate memoranda. They were returned to Benedict. He did not destroy them. He placed them in a private case with Arthur's commission and the last portrait taken before the regiment sailed, so that memory would no longer be kept only as punishment. Constance left Kent for the Bath household of a widowed cousin. She departed with her title, her income, and none of the power she had mistaken for entitlement. Owen Lister lost his clerkship. His cooperation was weighed when the magistrates examined his part, but no one pretended fear had made his falsified entries innocent. Louisa approved a small allowance for his mother only after confirming the woman had known nothing of the fraud. Owen himself was required to find work beyond Redmarsh. Mercy that erases consequence is only another false record, Louisa told Benedict in one of her letters. He answered, "Then we will keep both truth and mercy in the same hand." The 12 petitions were heard again by trustees who did not answer to Greaves, Constance, or the Redmarsh Estate Office. Mrs. Ward received permanent right of tenancy at Westmere and the pension originally recommended by her rector. Samuel Pike's roof was repaired before the winter rains worsened. And Bell's coal allowance was granted and carried back to the date of her first petition. The other families received decisions in open record, with reasons stated and copies delivered. The 12 blank spaces in the official docket were not filled, erased, or recopied. Louisa ordered a note placed beside them. These numbers had been withheld through unlawful interference and were preserved so that absence itself would remain visible. The new trust system required 3 keys held by 3 different custodians. No petition could be removed, refused, or sealed without a written entry and 2 independent signatures. Louisa remained at Havelock through November, Christmas, and the turn of the year. Benedict wrote twice each week. Some letters contained practical reports. Others carried smaller truths. He wrote that he had entered the chapel and left without asking Arthur to forgive him. He wrote that he had apologized to Mr. Hales for making obedience more important than judgment. He wrote that the chair beside him at breakfast felt empty, but he did not ask Louisa to fill it. When he visited, he came only after receiving her invitation. He never crossed a closed door without permission. On Twelfth Night, a parcel arrived containing 3 plain iron keys, each tied with a separate label naming its lawful custodian. Beneath them lay a single line in Benedict's hand. No one person should possess the whole door. Louisa read the sentence beside the fire and closed her fingers around the ribbon until the ache in her chest became almost tender. In February, she returned to Redmarsh by her own decision. Benedict waited beneath the portico while her carriage approached. He did not reach for her until she stepped down and offered her hand. They kept separate chambers at first. Their marriage did not mend through one grand declaration. It changed through repeated permission. Benedict knocked before entering her morning room. Louisa told him when quiet became distance instead of peace. He learned to apologize before shame hardened into coldness. She learned that disagreement no longer meant exile. In spring, they walked the memorial path together, and Benedict spoke of Arthur laughing with mud on his boots after losing a wager, not only of Arthur dying in Spain. In summer, Louisa fell asleep in the garden room with her hand resting in Benedict's, and woke to find that he had not moved for fear of disturbing her. By the second anniversary of their marriage, Redmarsh no longer felt like a house waiting for Louisa to fail. On the evening of the 29th of September, Benedict arranged a private supper in the garden room. There were no subscribers, no neighboring families, and no toast to duty. Only 2 places had been set. Louisa entered carrying her oak-painted fan, the old pearwood crack still held by her mother's silk thread. Benedict rose. "No speeches," he said. "I've learned to distrust speeches before supper." Louisa smiled. "Then this marriage has taught you something useful." They ate slowly while dusk gathered beyond the windows. Benedict told her a story about Arthur once attempting to teach a colonel's horse to bow for sugar and being chased across a parade ground when the animal learned only to bite his coat. Louisa laughed until Benedict laughed with her, and Arthur's name remained in the room without becoming a wound. After supper, Benedict brought a narrow leather-bound volume from the escritoire. The cover bore a simple title in gold: The Ward Review. Inside were the annual rules for independent examination of pension claims, tenant protections, and the 3-key record system. "Mrs. Ward won't like having anything named after her," Louisa said. She said precisely that. And yet she agreed. Only after Mr. Pike told her widows elsewhere might be protected by it. Louisa rested her hand on the cover. "Then it is not a monument." "No. It is a safeguard." Benedict watched her for a moment. "Are you happy that you came back?" He did not ask whether she had forgotten. He did not ask whether the past had been forgiven completely. Louisa looked at the man who had once mistaken repentance for sorrow and now understood it as conduct. "Your remorse did not purchase my love," she said. "Nothing could." Benedict's expression remained steady. "I know. But it made a place where love could live without surrendering dignity." She touched his cheek. "I love you, Benedict." He turned his face into her palm. "I love you, Louisa." His gaze fell to the fan. "I used to think anything broken had to be made as though the break had never happened." Louisa opened it. The painted oak branch spread across the silk, and the bound fracture remained plainly visible. "It was repaired long ago," she said. "You only mistook repair for erasure." She placed the fan beside the Ward Review. Then she took Benedict by the hand, drew him toward her, and kissed him first. On the table behind them, the silk-bound crack and the written safeguard rested side by side, neither hiding what had happened, both proving that what had been wounded could still be chosen, protected, and loved.